What's up, Quakes fans? We're back after another 3-1 victory at Sporting Kansas City. I'm obviously joined by Devon, and you guys might have noticed a very special guest with us today, Erick from ThatFootyDad. Erick, how you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic, man. It's a beautiful day. We got Quakes wins to talk about and future wins to get excited about.
Exactly. We have the Open Cup game coming up against Phoenix Rising. Unfortunately, we won't be able to cover that too much because this episode won't come out until after that takes place. We'll talk about it a little bit, but mostly we are going to focus on previewing. Well, first of all, talking about our big win at Sporting Kansas City, but also previewing our game against LAFC. Devin, what was your thoughts on the game against Sporting Kansas City?
I was pleasantly surprised at. I mean, not the first portion of the game, obviously. I think the first 35 minutes, we played pretty rough. We were slowly trying to move our way back into a rhythm, just kind of like we did, last game at home, and it was just kind of like a similar struggle. And once we found our feet underneath us, and I think partially credit to Harris's injury before halftime. I think that gave us some breathing room and gave us some time to recollect, um, and then put us in on the right path forward. But once we found our rhythm, we were unstoppable, and I think Bruce mentioned that in the press conference too. So first half, completely different story than second. Really proud of the boys in the second and how we finished the first half. But overall, great game, great comeback.
Eric, does that line up with your view?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I was kind of, fist in the air when that first goal went in. Just kind of like, this is the most Quakes thing to happen is just have this beautiful streak of games and then let someone like Sporting Kansas City come in and ruin it right before a big game like LAFC. And, thankfully, the Quakes have grown a lot since the last time I had this feeling. And, they brought it out and they closed out a game and said, nope, this is how we beat bottom of the league teams. Respect to them because at the end of the day, we still have to play the game and still have to score the goals. And Sporting didn't make it easy, but I think the higher quality team won for sure.
Yeah, I remember back in like 2019, we wouldn't be saying that to, in those days, like we'd be losing to bottom feeding teams and then
Yeah,
somehow competing against top seeded teams. So,
yeah.
really, really proud of how we're handling the season and, especially Kansas City.
Well,
Yeah, I
that
mean,
and for
sorry, go
me,
ahead.
sorry, one of the things is also playing away at Sporting Kansas City has not been kind to us in the last I don't even know, maybe 10 years. I could probably count how many times we've won at Children's Mercy Park in the last 10 years in my hands, And so probably one hand now that I think about it is that I still have Open Cup nightmares from penalty shootouts, and my real Quakes fans will remember that. And so to get the win there, regardless of where Sporting Kansas City, is always a big deal for us.
Yeah, definitely. And this season we're 6-1, which is the best we've ever done to start off the first 7 games of the season. But it's still been a perennial like thing looming over us, where it's just like, when's the other shoe gonna drop? When are we gonna go back to being the center of the earthquakes? And obviously that's always going to be looming over us until the last game of the season. But there's also been a very noticeable change in the culture in the club. Due to Bruce Arena partly, but also just this personnel. I think there's a really good group of guys. Um, but what is more important? Are these guys carrying Bruce Arena, or is Bruce more responsible for this change? Eric, I'm gonna let you go first.
Oh, oh, you can't take away from Bruce. At the end of the day, Bruce Arena is Bruce Arena. He's the winningest coach in the league for a reason. The man knows ball. The man knows what to do. There's always arguments of whether or not his style of play is still relevant in MLS today, which I think he's proving that he can make magic with very little ingredients, and that's the best recipe for a home cooked meal. Keep it simple, keep it to what soccer is supposed to be, and it seems to be working. But also a huge credit to the team that we have. The guys, I think, knew they were going to go into this season being underdogs every game. That's just a fact. Unfortunately, regardless of the talent that people like you and I see, every day, because we follow them so closely, we see the growth. We see the players like Jamar Ricketts go up and shine so much brighter than they did on day one. People like Preston Judd, who I was, one of the biggest critics of last season, really come in and say, nope, you're wrong. I'm one of the better strikers in this league. And you know what I mean? So we get to see it because we follow so closely, but to get to see the rest of the league see it, they've had that chip on their shoulder where no DP, you know what I mean? They're all, players that a lot of people wrote off, and here we are, one of the best teams in the league, and they deserve every bit of credit there.
A random comment. I'd want to point out, like, after every Quakes win or after every game, I like to go to different podcast groups of the teams that we just played, and I wanted to, I like listening to their insight, And it's funny because I was listening to an SKC podcast today, and one of their segments is who has the best hair on the field. And the answer to that question is typically their head coach, or I think it's their head coach. But they changed their answer, and Preston Judd was the person who they thought had the best hair in the field. And I just thought it was hilarious because in my head, I'm listening to the podcast and I'm like, it's not Preston Judd. There's no way. Because he reminds me of at least earlier in the season, his hair kind of reminded me of like a Jossie Zardes when he was back at Galaxy. And then she was like, yeah, Preston Judd has the best hair, even better than our head coach. And I just sat there like laughing. And, sure enough, like he got the assist against them. And I just thought it was a really, really funny moment.
I mean, that's not who I would have picked either. Devin, you and I are on the same page.
I thought it was Nico.
Yeah, I think Nico has a really nice style to his hair. I think that Jack Skane he has a really cool hair. It's kind of a Super Saiyan kind of vibe. No, I mean, this is kind of off track, but Eric, who has the best hair?
You know what? I like DeJuan Jones' hair. He's got style. Ricketts switches it up enough that he's a contender for sure. You know what I mean? He rocked a couple different looks last season, so there's definitely a couple contenders. I have a pretty similar haircut to like Daniel with the facial hair and the kind of modern mullet, so that would probably be my overall pick. But we got some stylish dudes on this team.
Can I say if he hit the field earlier in the game, I think my answer is always going to be Ian Harkes. Ian Harkes has that sexy hair which like parted down the middle, and it's always just kind of like wiggling around there.
It's classic.
Yeah. Thank you for bringing that up, Devin. But I am going to hold you to the question: who is more responsible for our success this season? And you can say it's equal. I'll accept that, but I'm curious about your thoughts on the matter.
I think there's only one person that can bring a group together cohesively, and I don't think it's necessarily the players that are responsible for that. I think Bruce is largely to point at for the success, and usually when you say you point at someone, you blame someone, but in this case, the Earthquakes are so successful this season, you point at Bruce and say that this is the guy that brought all of the players last season who seemed to have some sort of a disconnect and a connect at the same time. Good at scoring, also good at conceding. But this season, he brought the players together, and I think Bruce is largely to celebrate or to be celebrated for being that individual to bring all these guys together. I think who would have thought last year's subs contributed to this year's supporters shield leading performances? No one, except Bruce, because he's done it before, and he'll continue to do it again and again until he retires.
Right. I have to agree with that. And Devin, you brought it up earlier that for the first 30 minutes, we didn't look very good. We're losing the ball when it wasn't unforced errors. Way too many, and then we're giving the ball away. We kind of, I'm not saying it's anyone's fault in particular for the Sporting Kansas City goal, but we kind of let that happen in just not winning the ball back and, losing the ball in the first place. But after Calvin Harris got injured, and we never want to say it's a good thing. Obviously, it was good that he was able to keep playing, but regardless, Bruce called everyone over and kind of gave them a talking to, and we're like, guys, you got to do better. And he denied this in the press conference when he was asked about what happened in that sequence. But it was clear to see for the rest of us that there was a big difference between the Quakes before that talk and after. And then the Quakes that came out of that talk, were the ones who ended up winning this game 3-1. And that's a really big testament to the impact that Bruce has on this team. But speaking of impacts, I want to talk about Jack Skahan. Where did you guys think that he would be, coming into a game like this instead of our DP winger and then scoring a brace to win us the game, basically? Eric, I'm gonna start with you.
Did I think Jack Skahan was going to be the hero of Saturday night? Absolutely not. Nothing against him. I think he's had kind of a rough go at the season. He's always been kind of a good role player. He's been, when you need some kind of high press, really fast, just trying to kind of force the ball in their face. He's the man to call. But this season has just been kind of off. And I remember being at PayPal just a few games ago where the crowd really just turned on him. He had missed a couple open goals, and that messes with a player's head. So anytime that I see him in the lineup, I'm like, all right, is this the redemption game? Is this the game where you say nope? Like, hey, Quakes fans, like you can love me again, And I think he kind of took it on and was like, this is it, And so I'm happy that he got that. I'm happy that he got that off his back, getting that first goal of the season, but also getting right with the fans, because I think there's a lot more eyes on the Quakes this season that there has been in a while. Even just being at PayPal, the last game was, I haven't experienced that in a long time. So I'm happy that those newer fans are getting to see this side of Skahan instead of, what we saw a couple games ago. So no, I didn't expect it, but I'm very happy, both because he's a really cool guy off the field and, from everything that I've seen, and, because I think seeing him constantly come into the games and be a workhorse, regardless of being a starter or not, it's nice to see him kind of get that moment to shine after all those years of hard work.
100%. Definitely anything to add?
Yeah, I like to think of Jack Skahan as what is that wheel called in casinos where you bet on red or black. Do you guys know what I'm
roulette?
talking about?
Yeah,
Yeah, the
roulette.
roulette. He's like a roulette wheel. You don't know exactly what you're gonna get from Skahan game in, game out. So if I were to nickname him, I'd nickname him the roulette wheel. But also he's in moments you really need a player to perform in. I want to say the middle of the game. He doesn't necessarily start games well, and I don't know if he necessarily finishes games well, despite the fact that he's been a late sub, and he's been he's had impactful moments. But I think where he shines most is around the middle of the game, so between 30th minute to 70th minute, and we effectively saw that, and thankfully he showed up versus Sporting Kansas City. He knows where to pick his moments. He knows where to pick himself out on the field, find the right space. He's always been good at that. We've seen it in, year out when he's been playing with us. He knows how to find the gaps, the channels behind the back line. He's got the pace. And I think in the last couple of months, you've seen him, slightly improve on his dribbling and just ability to support his teammates effectively. And yeah, no, I'm really happy. Skahan was the man of the match and ended up getting both of those goals. But how can we talk about Skahan but not bring up Nico Tsakiris? Yet again.
There. I was getting
Yep,
there.
yet again. He's got 2 assists. Technically, one was a secondary assist, like a hockey assist, but it's still a tally on the on his stat sheet. So 2 assists, Nico. I mean, Abram, what are your thoughts here?
Well, I'm not going to let you derail my topic. I'm going to go back to Jack Skahan. I'm just kidding. I do want to talk about Nico. Thank you for bringing him up. But first, yeah, I mean, we've talked about Jack Skahan a lot over the past 3 years. since I've been doing this show, where I've had to apologize to Jack Skane just for not rating him enough, and now I'm here, 3 years later, like, well, he does keep coming up big. Whether we like it or not, whether he has a bad game, you'll forget about it. He has the memory of a goldfish, and that's what I like about him. Was that he's very fast, and we know that. But I think the main attribute that I like about him is his mentality, and he's always positive. So it doesn't matter what situation he's in, he's gonna look to make something happen. Just that's what he's gonna be trying to do. Um, but no, you hit the nail on the head. Nico Shakaris, there's a reason why he's the team of the week, team of the match day. Sorry, he's consistently been like one of the basically the heart of the team. He's behind the effectiveness of the attacks. He's not the only one, but he is like kind of. I don't. There's a term that I'm trying to coin. It's just in my head that I thought of. He's not the captain. He's not the best player, but he is the Red Ranger. Does that make sense? So he is the Red Ranger of the Son of the Earthquakes, where they're not always the best one. They're not always the leader, the captain. Like sometimes it's Tommy, sometimes it's the Black Ranger, but he is just like we look to him to make a difference, and he is always doing that. What, Eric? Are you okay?
Sorry, no, I was trying to see if I had a power coin. I know I have a power coin up here somewhere. I was gonna be like,
Oh my god!
I know
I
exactly.
thought he was looking for the Red Ranger or something.
Yeah,
No, that's exactly what I was. I was like, I know I have a Red Ranger power coin somewhere. So I was like,
Yeah.
no, I get the reference 100%.
The Tyrannosaurus Rex, I assume.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. That would have been really cool if he pulled that out of nowhere. But no, like I was saying, Nico has just been getting better and better on the assist that he had for the second goal. That was beautiful. The way that he just like sized up those defenders and just like kept kind of moving. He showed his agility and then accuracy to find Skane making that run in the box with his right foot, his weaker foot. Really big on Nico and the impact that he's had so far. And this is what we've known that he could do, but he's finally showing that he could do it week in, week out. Eric, anything to say?
No, you're again right on it. He's kind of been poised to be that player for us in the midfield for a while, but I just don't think he's had the room to shine. That's kind of been the story this season is we're seeing all these players who have been around. We've seen these players who have kind of had this big fanfare around them for a while when they were signed or when they made their debut, and then they were kind of slowly pushed aside for those big names, those big contracts that didn't really do much for us. And, a lot of us, again, that we've been following the team for a while know that there was a diamond in the rough just kind of waiting on the sideline. And this season, they're showing that there was a lot of those. So to see him just kind of get that confidence that I haven't seen from him in the past. He looks really comfortable on the ball. He looks like he's where he belongs, which is on a soccer pitch, playing in front of thousands of fans in his hometown. It's hard to beat, and it's hard to, it's hard to say why didn't we see this last year? Why didn't we see this? And but I'm just happy we're getting it now, and happy we locked him in for a good amount of time.
Yeah, in 7 games, I don't think any of us would be sitting here now, or at least during preseason, saying like he'd get out of 7 games, he'd get 6, goals and assists.
Mm-hmm.
Looking at last season's statistics, he's only got 1 goal and then maybe 1 or 2 assists, and that's it. Albeit he was with the national team for a while and was injured. There's a whole bunch of different factors where I didn't play many minutes, but he's getting full 90 minutes now, and he's producing the numbers that we're expecting a 10 to produce. We lost a 10 in the offseason. We got another 10 playing as a 10 this season, and he's living to expectations. I think it was the goal that Abram referenced. It was the first goal where he was taken on Calvin Harris and beat a couple of men to give Jack Skane the goal or the equalizer. But it was also the second goal where he was able to find Preston Judd with a curled pass outside, and Judd was also able, he was aware enough to find a wide open Jack Skane in the middle. So the partnership, and I tried to ask Bruce about this, the partnership between Preston Judd and Nico Sikaris, I was really looking forward to this, and I said it last podcast as well. I was excited to see the partnership between Preston Judd and Nico Sikaris. Sure enough, they delivered. Double assist on Skane's goal, but as good as we looked, I think we can also attribute SKC's woes to the fact that we scored 3 goals. Assessing the goal, at least both the first and second goal, the defending I felt was kind of atrocious. And Eric, I'll ask you in a second what your thoughts are, but the first goal, Nico went at Calvin Harris, beat him. Second goal, there was not a center back or a right back in sight anywhere in the middle of the goal. And that's something as a professional player, you have to be aware of your space there. I know you have to close down Preston Judd, but if there's a wide open player in the middle, you want to cover that passing lane, and give the goalkeeper a chance to play at a tighter angle rather than directly in the middle that Jack Skane was able to take a shot from. That absolutely poor defending. Eric, what are your thoughts?
No, you're right, and as someone who played center back most of their career right here, if you want to call it that, you're right. It makes no sense why he was wide open, and I think that's one of those things that as a center back, you go into a game and you say, okay, like I know who I'm locking down. I know who, as soon as they step in my box, I know where they're at, and either I'm on them or I'm yelling at someone to get on them. But to kind of give the Quakes credit on the other side for causing this confusion is we don't really have that guy. There's arguments to be made for Timo Werner. If he's in, that's the guy you want to make sure you're locking down. There's arguments to be made for Preston Judd because he's, our striker. He's been lighting it up when he's free in the box. But 7 games, 7 different goal scorers. I think the Quakes are causing enough chaos and confusion that it's making defenses who, at the end of the day, they're still professional players and they're still way better than most of us at defending. The Quakes have created enough chaos to put them off their game like that and to create that chaos that gives people like Preston Judd the space to score there, but it also gives people like Skane the space to score, because they don't really know, like, who am I marking, who am I not, where, and that's where the beauty of the game happens, is when there's confusion. That's where you get some of the coolest goals.
And yeah, and that's very well said, Eric. But that brings us into the next question I had, which I'm actually going to ask Devon to ask it because I'd like to answer. Devon, you brought up in the Discord an interesting point about Timo Werner, or the lack thereof. Do you know what question I'm talking about?
Yeah, and I've brought it up a couple of times, and it's more of, I don't know if it's to be taken as serious the way I asked it, but I'm
Right.
going to ask you. In the last 7 games, we've only seen Timo Werner play 4 times. Um, do you think we're better with or without Timo Werner on the field?
When you say you, who are you referring to?
You, Abram, do you think we
Okay.
as the Earthquakes?
Sorry, I was just making sure. No, yeah, I don't think that, obviously this is more of a thought experiment rather than like an assessment on your part, which I think is fair. We should be asking these questions. We have been very good, but it's not that we haven't been good without Timo. It's not that we haven't been good with Timo Werner. He's played 4 of the 7 games, and in those 4 games, we won 3 of those. So it's not like Timo's putting a real damper on anything, and it's not his fault that we lost the Seattle game. In fact, I think that he was one of the better players in that game, despite not being able to make anything happen in the final third. I think that when you get to the later stages of the season, or you get to the games where you're gonna have to start grinding more, and the things that have been working for us, if they don't work in a certain game, I think you're gonna really miss his quality. If you don't have him. And so I think that he would be really good to have once he's fit. Obviously, an unfit Timo Werner, we are better without somebody who's not going to be able to pull their weight. I think anyone would agree with that. But, once he can play, once everything said and done, I think that we want him on the field. And I also think that, if we're looking at this Sporting Kansas City game as an example of us playing better without him, do you think that, Jack Scahan, or do you think that Timo Werner can't do any of the things that Jack Scahan did? I think that he's just as capable of doing that. Maybe that he gets marked tighter. There's all kinds of differences there, but I think that he finishes both those goals. I think that he's fast enough to get into the spaces that Jack gone into. I don't think that we are a better team without him. I just think that we've been very good, and that we should, hopefully improve once he is able to be integrated to the team fully.
Eric, what do you think? Do we look better with or without Timo?
I think that's tough, man. I mean, it's if he'd had a full preseason with the Quakes, it'd be a little bit easier to kind of pick a side here, because then it's like, hey, like, you're integrated, you're part of the team, you've spent that bonding time with the team, which is really important for the team chemistry. I think then I'd be a little bit more comfortable saying yes, we're better with, better without. I think my main thing is the Quakes are just good, which is really refreshing to say. The Quakes are good, and I think Timo is sort of like the cherry on top right now. I don't think he makes us worse, which is something that, again, is refreshing to say as a Quakes fan, because we've all been there where DPs have definitely made us worse. Sorry, Emigara, I still remember you and that Ferrari. But if my real Quakes fans will know. But yeah, he doesn't make us worse, which is a really big thing for us moving into this new kind of uh, era of being a Quakes fan. And I think he's a cherry on top. I think there's still a lot to kind of figure out with his team chemistry, but at the end of the day, the 10 guys that are on the pitch are working hard enough that I think he takes eyes off of them, which can be good because then the pressure's off. If things go bad, the media is really only focused on the fact that Timo Werner lost the game, not the San Jose Earthquake. So I think it makes it easier for some of those younger guys. But when he's good, then it's like, hey, there's that cherry on top. There's that sweet treat at the end that just makes us kind of feel better. So I think yes, he makes us better, but he doesn't make us worse. And the team has showed that Timo or no Timo, we're winning games.
Eric, I think you're right. It is a healthy balance. It comes down to whether or not the tactics give us the advantage, and Timo is obviously part of those tactics. And since he's a big name, the attention draws to him rather than other players who are also picking up the pieces right now. There aren't even any pieces right now. We're a full puzzle. Despite the lack of depth, we're a full puzzle and we're winning games. But apart from Seattle, we're doing a really good job with the depth that we have. And it's a thought provoking moment where I had pointed out that of the games that Timo Werner missed, we had scored 3 goals in every single game. So to benefit Timo Werner, he's played 4 games and he's had 2 assists. So he's producing at a 50% level, which is still good. We want him to make any, contribute of any points of any kind, which I'm happy that he's able to provide assists. But it's also the fact that on the other hand of the argument, some fans can say Timo Werner is an attacker. He's a left wing. He's a 9. He said his preference is a false 9, but at the same time, we've only seen Timo Werner take 2 shots on target since he's joined the team. I think we expect to see more from him, and also that he's an injury-prone player and he's missed a couple of games so far due to I think it was a lower back injury that Bruce had stated. So that's also a current ongoing issue right now with Timo. Missing more games due to injury, but also the fact that we want to see him take more chances on target. We want to see him contribute just a little bit more than what he's doing right now, because it seems like anytime there's an opportunity at hand for Timo Werner, he hesitates in front of goal and he keeps looking for that pass rather than to finish off a shot himself.
Yeah, I think as well said. We've been, we had just asked for more from Timo. Not that he's been bad, but we'd like to see him, take the onus and the responsibility of being the star player, which it's been a little bit like it's been good, but not amazing. But that was, just before he got his injury, and he hasn't been able to appear much for us. But you mentioned depth, Devin, and that brings me into the next segment. What do you guys think that we should do, considering we have LAFC on Sunday, but before that we have Phoenix Rising in the Open Cup? A lot of Quakes fans in the past are like, okay, you gotta throw that game against LAFC and go full strength in the Open Cup because we want to win the Open Cup. And I've always been somebody who's been hesitant to do that. Not that I don't want to win the Open Cup, but it's just like, if we go all in on the Open Cup and then we lose that, and then we threw games in the MLS to do so, then we're stuck without anything, and we put all our eggs in a basket, and then we threw the basket away, and it hasn't worked out for us either way. But I am curious what you guys think that we should do this year, since it's going a lot better for us in the league so far. Devin, I'll start with you.
Well, by the time this goes out, we have already played Phoenix Rising, so I want to congratulate the Earthquakes on their win. No, I'm just kidding. I don't want to jinx anything, but Nani, congratulations on the your first professional debut. Hopefully, if I'm wrong, then I'm wrong, and so be it. You can call me out, but as Bruce stated in the press conference, I think we're going to see a lot of rotations, and I think those rotations will come from attacking pieces. If we really want to succeed, I think we're going to have to bench Benji. I think we're going to have to bench Preston. I think we're going to have to bench, we shouldn't play Jamar Ricketts. I assume he's coming back from injury. Bruce didn't want to touch up on that, but the way he was talking about Jamar's return, he also included his name with Timo Werner and Vitor Costa. So I can only assume that he was injured, and that's why he missed the game, despite flying out there with the team. I say we rest Jamar, wait for LAFC. I think we bring in a couple of other guys, give Jonah a chance, give some other depth a chance. I know that one of Quakes 2's homegrowns, or Earthquakes homegrowns, Mendoza, he played a full 90 with Quakes 2 and was actually their key to the victory. He played a full 90, so I don't see us using him for the Phoenix Rising game in US Open Cup. I think we're going to utilize a lot of the guys that we've seen on the bench. Paul Mary, I was going to say Scan, but
Did
it's
you
not
just
Scan.
call him Paul Mary?
That's how he says his last name. Yeah.
He says it like that?
Yeah, he says it.
French.
Paul Mary.
Okay. Yeah. It's been like, what, 5 years, and we've always called him Paul Mary. Okay. That's a big change I'm going to have to adjust to, but all right.
So,
You got to say it with a French accent, though.
Paul
I'm not
Marie.
going to say it. Paul Marie. No, yeah. So Crystal linked his SoundCloud audio to pronouncing his last name in the Discord, and that's how he said it. And also, I was part of that team that did the private travel thing, the charter flights. And when I talked to Paul, he said his last name Mary. So I was like, oh, that's a bit different. So yeah, it is Paul Mary for fans out there who call him Marie. You can still call him Marie, but that's how he pronounces his last name, Mary. Seeing guys like him, maybe even Fernandez in the midfield, take out Bo for a little bit, maybe leave Bo as a late sub. The possibilities, despite the fact that we have a low count in depth, the possibilities kind of feel endless because there's a lot of players that can play at multiple positions. They're very versatile. Muni can play left back. We have Max Floriani at center back, who can replace Roberts. We also have there's a lot of replacements at left back. Just a bunch of different guys that you can just name left and right. Maybe we'll see Crockford in goal, or our backup instead of Danielle, because Danielle is known to get injured. I kind of hope we see Danielle in goal, but also at the same time, it's LAFC on Sunday, and that's the biggest opponent, at least in my eyes. We're succeeding in MLS. I would rather save our top players for that game instead of Phoenix Rising? Because I could see our depth, uh, making damage or doing good damage against Phoenix. What are your who do you think would be subbed or replaced, Eric?
I mean, it's tough. It's tough to gauge. You know, as fans, we put a lot of importance into these games. I mean, it's a knockout game, and obviously the game against LAFC is an important game for fans. There's obviously Portland spoiled our fun of taking their unbeaten streak away, but anytime an LA team loses, another Quakes fan is born, or whatever you want to say. But trying to put myself in Bruce's head, I feel like he's going to look at it as it's just another 3 points. Yes, it's LAFC. Yes, it's a big game. Yes, we want it, but it's 3 points, right? Can we is throwing a knockout game, not necessarily throwing it, but is not putting in all of our effort into a knockout game worth just 3 points? I don't know, right? This early in the season, I think we could probably. It's kind of a toss up. I'd like to see a good lineup out there. But I do think we have enough depth to do it. I think you put Nani in for Preston. I think you get kind of rotating in maybe your Florianis, your Jasinskis. I really don't like messing with the back four, but there is room to play there, and I think those are all players that all respect to Phoenix Rising that can compete at the very least at the USL level. Phoenix Rising is kind of one of the uh, better teams in USL, just historically. So they're not to be taken lightly, but there's definitely a lot of rotation that can happen. But you're right. I think Shakiris will probably sit. I think we'll see Jonah in. I think we'll see Nani's debut, as you mentioned. And I think I will see some good rotation out in the wing. I think it's tough to really put a finger on what exactly will happen, but I think that's kind of what where I think Bruce's head will be. Just
Eric?
focusing on trying to get CONCACAF soccer on the schedule for next year.
Yeah, I kind of agree. And Eric, I want to throw another question and then shoot it to Abram after. What is your interpretation of U.S. Open Cup in terms of importance for this season? We're succeeding in MLS so well. A lot of fans may be shifted in different tiers in terms of importance based on our success. Where do you think U.S. Open Cup stands in 2026 for you?
I think it's one where we should be going for that cup. We don't have a U.S. Open Cup. We haven't played CONCACAF soccer, at least not in a long time. And admittedly, with Espinoza leaving, I've been kind of tracking Nashville a little bit closer than I would have on previous seasons, and to see the excitement that people have for CONCACAF soccer, to see them play these teams that that experience that you get playing abroad, and obviously it's not at the level of like a UEFA Champions League, but it's a really cool experience, watching them and playing against teams like America in Mexico, and all these smaller teams that I'm familiar with from Central America, just from following those leagues. Like, I want to experience that as a Quakes fan. I haven't gotten a chance as an adult, as a fan who can go to these games, who can travel to these games. Like, if there's a Quakes game in Guatemala, I'm booking a flight. I'm going home, and you know what I mean? I'm doing what I can to go watch my team play against a team from my home country. Like, that's exciting. So I'd love to see them really put in an effort, which I don't think we've seen even from Bruce last season. Despite how far we did get, I don't think there was really a focus on winning the cup. I think it was like, let's kind of put out like an 80-90% full lineup, and if we win, great. If not, we still have MLS to go through. But I'd like to see a little bit more focus, because I think US Open Cup is the silverware would be great in our trophy case. We've got the room for it, and CONCACAF soccer. Let's get the Quakes in there. Let's broaden our reach, and hopefully attracting more players that want to play continental soccer for the future. Because I think we're riding that high of no DPs and still winning, but the season's only going to get tougher. The depth is only going to be called on more throughout. So having that for the Quakes of when they're signing players, you're coming in, but you're you're playing continental soccer, I think is just another plus for us. So I think go in for it, Bruce. Let's do it. Let's get that cup.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I would have no complaints about that. I think it would be, honestly, now you mentioned the Guatemala thing, I'm like, I hope that happens for your sake. Like, I want you to be able to go on that trip. That would be dope. I unfortunately, I'm Mexican and my family is from Jalisco. We support Guadalajara, and when we played them, dude, what are you talking about? You don't have a horse in the race. Um, so, uh, when we played Chivas in was it Levi's? I think I got food poisoning on the way to the game, and I had to tell the Quakes PR like, "Hey, I can't go." Like I was halfway there, and I was just like, "I just can't do it." Like I'm gonna, be in the stadium. It's just not a good situation, so I had to turn around and go home, and that was really disappointing. And Chivas is a team that like they I get to watch them more. I guess I don't know. I don't think it's as rare for me as it would be for probably you to watch your team play against a Guatemalan team. Do you have a Guatemalan club team that you support? Just off topic.
I do, and I do have a Mexican league team that I support. I won't call myself a fan because I know if you're watching this, but I do support America. That's why I had to give you a little stuff there. But yes,
I
my
could tell
family.
that's what that reaction was. I knew that it wasn't like Atlas or something. It was America.
No, no, no. And the funny thing is, I only support them because I used to give my sister's dad, my stepdad. He was a big Chivas fan. He watched them every game, and I had to sit there and watch him every game. And watching him get mad when America would score was always hilarious. So my sister and I would root for America just to mess with him, and then it kind of just
Contrarian.
stuck. And it's kind of our way to honor him now is where we keep to that, and so that's why I support America. I'm not a diehard. I don't watch their games. I'll watch a Clásico, and if they're on, I'll put them on. But if I had to pick a team, that'd be my team. But back home in Guate, I'm a Cremas fan. Comunicaciones, that is my team. That's the team that I almost had an opportunity to play for as a young kid. So that's I gotta that's my team, and that's my connection to back home.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing. But yeah, we're going into this game against LAFC. They're coming off the back of a 2-1 loss at the hands of Portland. I got to watch the highlights of that game, and honestly, for me, there's not much I can pick apart and say, like, this is how we fit into this and this is how we'll do. Because in a lot of the goals, there was an element of luck involved. I don't know if you guys got to watch the highlights, but the Terry goal, like obviously very well struck, but ask him to do that again. I don't know if he can. Obviously, I hope the best for his career and stuff, but like I just that's a very difficult goal to replicate. The two goals that Portland scored, the first one I was like, okay, well, he did great to take that opportunity for himself, but again, it was the keeper probably could have done better. And the second goal, the winning goal, in the 96th minute, I believe, the keeper just jumped over the ball and kind of let the guy, on the line have a free header. And I don't blame the keeper. I am the last person to blame the keeper. But I was watching this game and I was like, is this guy professional? What is he doing? It was like really shocking to see, that level of play. And so I'm like, okay, well, they're probably gonna fix that. They're probably gonna replace the keeper. I just don't see how like we can go in and then replicate any of those things because of how kind of bizarre they were. But obviously, I hope to give LAFC another upset. Devin, what are your thoughts coming into this game?
I don't have many thoughts. I just kind of like my hands tremble a little bit just because of the fact that it's LAFC and we're tied with least goals conceded with them. So looking at that number alone, I think it's difficult for both teams to go in expecting expecting goals because both teams are excellent at defending. With two good defending teams comes a great battle in the midfield. I think whoever wins the midfield will win the game. That said, I think a really big key to LAFC is Benji Kikanovic because of the fact that he is on Denny Buwanga's side. I know they do have a midweek game in CONCACAF Champions League, so they're going to utilize their first team players for that. Meanwhile, we can kind of rest our players for U.S. Open Cup, so I think there's a bit of an advantage for there. But Benji Kikanovic is a player to look out for in hopes to shut down Denny, just like he's been doing the last 7, you can say 10 games as well in preseason, how he locked up Wilfred Zaha. If there's a player to lock someone down, Benji Kikanovic hasn't conceded a goal all season from his side. And as well as Nico and Bo. I think if you want to win the midfield battle, you're going to have your young guys step up and take away the passing lanes and space from Heung-min Son and anyone in the central area. I think we're going to have to, as you pointed out, Abram, in the game against Portland, I think, you have to take the chances that are given to you. Even if you score Wando-like goals, just like Portland did for both of them, you just, whatever is given to you, presented to you at your feet, place it on target and hope for the best. Because even as you said in Portland's second goal, the goalkeeper may be a professional goalkeeper, and sometimes they may be a semi-professional goalkeeper. You never know what you're going to get until you test the goalkeeper. So I think those are my keys to the game. If you want to win a game, you have to present yourself with feasible opportunities, and also win the midfield battle plus Benji Kikanovic. So that's what I'm thinking. Eric, what are your thoughts?
A couple, man. You said a lot of very good points there. You did bring me back to a previous question about Open Cup that I didn't think about. Is another reason why we should go all in is with the Quake success. I don't think the first team's going to be playing an Open Cup next year. With the way that things are structured, we'll probably see them in Leagues Cup. So if this is one of the last opportunities to bring that trophy home, let's do it. So that kind of came to my head. I totally forgot about that part. So Bruce, let's bring home the Open Cup, because I know you're watching. I know Bruce sits at home and goes, let's watch the latest Tectonic Takes. So
Thursday at 9 a.m. Thursday at 9 a.m.
finishes
Like,
yeah.
what are those boys up to today?
Yeah,
He and the missus are cooking dinner. He's like, "Oh, let's turn on Tectonic Takes."
But another point was, you brought a great point, Abram, is when you said, how can we do this? And I love that, because there's always a conversation, especially people like us that cover teams, when we say we and that. But this is definitely a we question. And I think this is going to, is what can we do is, as fans, is show up, because Portland is one of those places that is not easy to play. And I guarantee you that while my wife's a keeper, so I can't always blame the keeper, because then she's the first to say, yeah, but if we don't score, or yeah, but the defense. So I won't put the blame on the keeper, but playing in a place like Portland with those fans, because the first thing that guy did when I don't remember who the forward was that scored, he jumped up, the crowd was behind him, he almost fell off the log. I saw that. But that crowd was roaring, and I'm sure that has to play into a keeper who has to come in and play instead of Yodi's. He's playing in a place like Portland. That's got to be hard, and that had to factor into some of the blunders and to some of the play. So if we can make PayPal be that, then that 12th man really makes a difference. So as fans, we can go out and show out and make it even crazier than it was the last home game, because it was a great game to be at, and I think LAFC is only going to get better. So as fans, we can do that. But yeah, I think we have the speed in the back that we didn't have at the Levi's game last year. I think that killed us. The speed wasn't there. We weren't able to keep up with that kind of dual threat of Son and Bouanga. And I think this year we do. We have the speed. So we're kind of running out of excuses as to why to lose to them. So I'd love to see Benji locking up Bouanga. You're right on there. If there's a guy that's going to do it, it's going to be, Sacramento's finest. And then again, just we can't let them have that free space in the middle. But with somebody like Vieira in there, I think it's going to be a very gritty game. It's something we haven't said too much this year about Grit FC, but it's going to be Grit FC Goonies 2.0, where we just kind of fight 90 minutes, and we're going to be bruised and battered. And I think I think it'll be a game where the best team's going to win, and I just hope that it's the Quakes that day.
Yeah, I think something that Tom Bogert mentioned too is LAFC threw a lot of their substitutes on the field versus Portland, and they still competed, and that shows you how much depth that they have on their team. You know, sure, we are a cohesive team and we are a whole puzzle, but we don't have the depth that LAFC has, where they almost go to Portland and beat them at their own game, at their own home, with a full starting 11. Um, it shows the amount of power that LAFC have. And even if they rest players for the San Jose game, because if they want to go all in on CONCACAF Champions Cup, then by all means they can probably do that. And if they lose to San Jose, then sure, they lose 3 points, and we'll just think of it as it's LAFC. They're just going to win a bunch of other games after they play us. And there's probably no concern for them about missing playoffs just because of how deep their squad is. So, we may or may not actually see some of their starting 11s, because I believe this is this past week, or I guess tomorrow or Wednesday, when LAFC play in Champions Cup. This is their round 1 of 2, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. I believe this is the first round, so they have another game next week in Champions Cup.
It should be the first leg, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think they're at single game knockouts yet.
I think with that in mind, they may sit out a couple of their starting guys just to compete in CONCACAF Champions Cup. So
leg 2.
Leg 2 is tomorrow.
Yeah.
Okay. So maybe we will see their full roster against San Jose. But either way, we may not play our primary guys. We may against Phoenix Rising. What are your thoughts, Abram?
Just so you can cut it in.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, it's gonna be a tough one. LAFC is always tough, and I've been in the BMO Stadium, and we've been louder than, like, as a fan, we've been louder than the 3252, and those games I felt that there was like there was electricity in the air. I felt it before, and we almost beat them at their home when they turned off the VAR switch on Akapo when he was brought down in the box, and they couldn't go to review because the VAR just wasn't recording. Whatever the heck that was. That's a game where I truly believe we could have won, and I don't think that team was as cohesive as this team. I don't think that team wanted to win as badly as this team wants to win. That's just a comment on the mentality of the two squads. That's why I'm hoping that we rest a few guys against Phoenix, just because I think that we have some really good players on our B team that will do a very good job against Phoenix, and we have a genuine chance against LAFC. Because there's been times in the past where it's like, well, the MLS, this is our worst season ever. Why not just try really hard for the Open Cup? That's been a point of discussion. But this year is like, well, we have a very good chance in MLS, and three points against LAFC would be really good to have, later in the year. Because we missed out on a tiebreaker last year against Royal Salt Lake. So every point counts in the league. And yeah, I agree that, we might not be in the Open Cup next year, and that is something to consider. But I think that the guys, if I'm thinking about what Bruce is thinking about, I think that they have blinders on for this year, and then whatever happens next year, that's for future Bruce to decide or whatever. So that's my hope, because, like I said, we have a very strong team. We saw Benji lock up plenty of guys. I think that he is a very good matchup for Bwanga, who likes to, use his pace a lot. He has more than pace, but I think that Benji at least matches him for pace and definitely for physicality. No, this is a very good chance to finally prove, because they don't believe us. They don't believe in the Earthquakes, and this is like, LAFC has been probably the best MLS team this year, apart from their loss against Portland. This would be a very big statement, not just like, okay, well, Quicks got lucky again, or whatever they want to say. this is like a real statement. Hopefully.
Yeah, I think you're right. Um, it LAFC's. I think they provide a lot of back and forth. They have their moments where if they slip up, then just like Portland did, there's an easy counter opportunity. A lot of players, when put under pressure, kind of not necessarily crumble, but they show cracks, and you have to abuse those cracks. You have to expose them. And I think Bruce Arena has instilled that exposure mentality in our team. And it's something that we don't really talk about because it's kind of just like one of those under the earth type situations where you feel it but you don't see it. Um, when you notice the Earthquakes pressing, they press as a unit, they press hard, and they press high. And when that happens, a lot of the times the opposition are exposed and they panic and they lose possession of the ball, and that's when we strike. That's the biggest thing for me when I'm watching the Earthquakes. I see a lot of that. As Abram has pointed out many times on this podcast, Eric, we push, and we're like we have a trigger press in the corners, are the other team's defensive corners of the field. So when they pass the ball, goalkeeper passes the ball to each fullback. That's when we trigger press as a unit, and they end up kicking the ball out in the middle of the field where one of our Earthquakes players is standing. We collect the ball and we immediately counter down the middle. We saw that versus Sporting Kansas City. And I think if we can utilize that press again and eliminate the passing zones, any passing zones, passing lanes, restrict them out of zone 14. I think we can really do some damage against LAFC, whether or not they have a starting of a fully rostered starting 11.
Eric, thoughts?
Yeah, I mean the big thing I think for us is we've been on this road before. We've this season already. We've already had so many of these. Well, they're one of the best teams in the league. We've faced Vancouver, we've faced San Diego, and I'm as a Quakes fan, I kind of feel like we have a bit of we were kind of the catalyst for their downfall this season since they're sitting in eighth place after coming to PayPal Park, and who's to say we can't do it to LAFC? LAFC's coming to town. We'll show them what a historic club can do. All respect to everything they've accomplished in their short lifespan. It's longer if you include Chivas USA, but whatever. Be triggered, LAFC fans, because
And we do.
it's fine. But we're this team is riding that high. Like, let's keep riding it. Let's keep going into that. Let's imagine beautiful things. All my Mexican national team fans will know that Chicharito, imaginemos cosas grandes, or whatever he said. Imagine beautiful things. Like, we can beat LAFC at their best. If they want to throw a B team, hey, that's fine. That's their 3 points to lose. So I hope they come with the full 11, because I'm sure Bruce is going to come with the full 11, because the depth, I think we have the depth to have two solid 11s for this kind of play, where we have a midweek match for Open Cup. Your Nanis, your Fernandez, they're there. It's the same idea of they're the future Nico Chiqueras and Bolarus that just needed that opportunity to shine. You know what I mean? We have Harks and Vieira, who are a little bit interchangeable at this point. So however they want to show up, I think the Quakes are a good enough team that, right now, if they do lose, they'll be using the excuse of we have midweek, we have that, but it can go either way. We have midweek games to play. We've got knockout games to play, and we're putting all of our eggs in every basket. You know what I mean? Because we have that many eggs. Let's fill them all. Let's do it all. It's going to be beautiful. And I think that the the league has kind of gotten that wake up call finally, and no team is coming into PayPal going 3 points are secured. You know, um, they're professionals and they probably don't anyways, but definitely this season where you know the league's starting to wake up. They're starting to know like the Quakes are the team to beat right now. They are the team that everybody's going to want to take that home. The players for sure, whether or not the coaches are seeing it that way, the players for sure, they're coming in going, yeah, we're going to be the ones that take that win from underneath their sails. And so yeah, we're I don't know. I'm just a happy Quakes fan saying bring your best LAFC because we're bringing our best.
Very well said, Eric. And my main takeaway from this match is that I hope that whatever the score is, it doesn't hurt us in the long run. I think that if we can, because teams lose, that's what happens over the course of a season. If we lose, I still want to see the same Quake show up in the few days' time for the Austin game. For the games beyond that. The mentality of the team has to stay strong regardless of the score, but there are a lot of reasons why we can be optimistic for this game. Now, we won't be here for the Austin game. We won't be able to preview that game, but we will be back to preview the game after that next week. Eric, thank you so much for joining us this week. Where can the people find you?
As always, I'm on Instagram and TikTok. ThatFootyDad, come say hi. I post all sorts of soccer and dad life content. If you like that kind of stuff, come say hi. I might make you laugh, or I might make you think about how great the Quakes are. You never know with my videos.
Yeah. Also, if you're wondering why under Abram's face, usually there's names underneath us, and if you're wondering why Abram's name says birthday boy, it's because on the day of recording, it is Abram's birthday today. So please, in the comments, wish Abram a happy birthday. We love you. We love you so much, buddy.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I'm 26 now, so I'm officially closer to 30 than I am 20, which is not as fun, but obviously blessed to live another year. Obviously, also blessed to have this community around me. The Quakes Discord is an amazing place to be. I've been trying to get Eric to join us on there. Unsuccessful so far, but we'll see what happens. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. We'll be back next week. Until then, go Quakes.
Go Quakes.
Go Quakes.